a note about the first reading. We hear in the book of the prophet Isaiah there are these servant songs about the servant of the Lord. Traditionally, we've talked about four of them, but some have argued that there's a fifth one. But the traditional four that we hear the first one today, second one tomorrow, third one we heard yesterday as the first reading at Mass, and we'll also hear on Wednesday evening. And then the fourth servant song is the longest, and that we will hear on Good Friday as the first reading. And we hear at the very beginning, "Here's my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one with whom I am pleased." Sound familiar? The words of the Father at the baptism to Jesus. "You are my Son, my beloved, with whom I am well pleased." That God speaks that to him. And we see Jesus' ministry then is this servant of the Lord who ultimately will be killed, which we'll hear more in depth in Isaiah's fourth servant song, which we hear on Friday. In the gospel today, we hear about how Jesus has come to Bethany, and this is 6 days before Passover, so when you do the math, this ends up being the Saturday before Palm Sunday, so just before he has his triumphant entry into Jerusalem. And Mary is so thankful to Jesus. He raised her brother from the dead. She takes a liter of costly perfumed oil. I'm sure it doesn't say liter in the Hebrew or in the Greek, since they probably didn't have liters back then. Made from genuine aromatic nard. Now, this probably came from India, which it's not like they got on a plane and shipped it over, from India over to Israel. Would have been a long, costly process. And so this liter of costly perfumed oil with a genuine aromatic nard, which when it says the house was filled with the fragrance of the oil, it would have been very aromatic, as it were. And John is saying, I was there. I can remember the smell of this. She anointed the feet of Jesus and dried them with her hair. Judas, very calculating. He's able to figure out how much this would have cost. You could have sold it for 300 days' wages. Now, I figured out, asked Google this morning, what's the average daily wage in New Hampshire? And then I multiplied it out. That would be about more or less $70,000. That's a princely gift, right? To pour out $70,000 on the feet of Jesus. But we note the difference between Judas and Mary. Judas calculates how much this would have cost. Mary doesn't. Mary just pours out freely because she loves. Jesus, he could have given one drop of his blood, and that would have been enough to save the whole human race. All the sins of the past, all the sins of the future. One drop of his blood, it would have been enough. But Jesus didn't calculate the cost, and he gave us what? Every drop of his blood on the cross. Lovers don't calculate the cost. Lovers just pour out because they love. And I say this because in my prayer this morning, the Lord asked me, why do you calculate? That I had to be convicted that I calculate the cost instead of pouring out my love, as does Mary. Do we calculate? Do we calculate the cost of our love for God? What is it going to cost for me to drag myself out of bed to get here for Mass in the morning? Or do we say, I'm so rejoicing to give this as a gift to Jesus, he who wants to give such great gift to me. My last parish, I got a newly ordained deacon for a couple years, then they moved him on me. But he had newly ordained, he's coming in and we're working together, and one of the things he liked to say a lot was, not that you have to go to Mass, it's that you get to go to Mass. Or with, people in ministry, it's not that you have to do this ministry, it's that you get to do this ministry. What's the motivation in our hearts towards our relationship with Jesus? Is this something we have to do? So that, like fire insurance type of thing, and make sure that we don't go to hell? Or do we see Jesus and with such love, not calculate the cost, but just pour out our love for him as he has poured out his love for you?